Hi everyone, my name is Craig Williams and I'm going to show you through the track that myself and Sluggers wrote and is either coming out or, depending on when you watch this, out now on Get Physical. So let's change it up so you guys can see what's happening a little bit more. As you can see, there's not that many tracks in here. We have like couple of kicks, ride, some hats, tom, shaker, a 303, a Juno, this sub, two stabs, which is the same track, but we just kind of separated them out a little bit more, and a high synth, and they're just like a little effects. That's it. It's pretty down and dirty. It's pretty basic. The structure of the track, it just builds up until this point here. This could be like the drop if you want to call it that, and then it just has the outro. It's more of like a peak time track, but yeah, let's get into it. So you can see here in my session I have these two tracks down here. These are previous mixes that I had done. And I always put these in the track so then I can then go back and reference that so I can try and better those as I'm going along. It just makes it a lot easier when you're in the mixing stage. If you have a reference, it's good to have another track that you like sonically that you're trying to not replicate, but trying to get in the ballpark. But I also like one of my previous mixes so I can see that I'm actually making it better and not sort of going back on the mix at all. And we'll just get into the parts of the track. So as you can see up here, we have this distortion track. So what I like to do with the drums, and I do this for the most part, sometimes I do it more than others. You can really hear it. It's really present in my remixes that I did for Mix Hell and Antigua. You can hear that super crunchy drums and stuff like that. And it's something that I like to do just to kind of add some more harmonics and just add more weight to the drums. But the way that I do it is I don't just put a distortion over a whole drum bus or something like that. I like to send a little bit of each drum to a bus, and then I send that out through my console, and then I'll just send it to either one of the synths or maybe the analog heat or something like that, and then that will add the crunch to it. So if I play just the distortion track on its own, you can hear it's pretty crunchy, and it's only a little bit in there. So it's just adding that little bit more. And I found that by sending the drums out like this, it's kind of uses the kick as the compressor to compress everything down because of the, if I send it through a synth or something like that, there's only so much sound that can get through, so it just automatically crunches it down, and you don't have to sort of mess around. That's why I have it set to the sends. I can kind of do my little mix using these here. So if I bring up the mixer, you can see I have these elements here all go into it, so I can kind of dial in how much I want of each. You can hear here that ride's pretty open, and then when it all comes back in with the kick, it's when it really squashes it down. That's when it gets super crunchy because the kicks come back in and like really distorted everything up there. For the main elements, we have simple kick, nothing too crazy. All I'm doing with the EQ is just taking off the super, super lows. That's it. And then I have the PSP Vintage Warmer just with a little bit of drive and I think a little bit of knee, just to add a little bit more in there. Next up is the kick top, and I have a reverb on that as well to kind of add a little bit more space with that sound. Again, have a little bit more of the EQ, the low end taken off, and the vintage warmer on there again. Again, with this ride, you can hear it's pretty tight, especially right at the front. It's really, really tight, no release. And as it goes, it's longer and longer and longer. So we just, when Sluggers were over here, we had the drum set up and then we would record in these whole sections. So we would sit and just slowly open the decay on the TR8, because we use the TR8 for the majority of these drums. And it's something you can do with a plugin as well. If you've got a like the drum rack in Ableton or the Ultra Beat or something like that, you can still do all this. It's just that we have the hardware here, so that's why we did it like that. And on that one, we just have EQ taking out a bunch of the lows and the mids, and then boosting a little of the highs to give it a bit more air. And then we have this sidechain compression on there. After that, we have some hats that don't come in until that break. So it takes all that time. And one thing you'll notice with the track is we don't have any claps or snares the whole track. So on this one, there's a little bit more processing. Again, we have the EQ taking out a bunch and then just adding a little bit more. Have the saturator giving just a little bit more crunch to it. I have another EQ just dipping. This is like a little frequency that was kind of biting a little bit. So that sort of biting sound. So we wanted to take a little bit of that out. So just put another EQ on there and just a little bit of surgical EQing there. Have these hats, just the 16th hats going along. For these ones, we just have, again, taking out the lows and just boosting a little bit of the highs there. Compressor and then a spreader. It's just taking out any spread on the lows and then just a tiny little bit on the highs there. I forgot we had the sidechain compression and then the same with the spreader on the previous hats. Have these toms that, as you can see here, start to come in a little bit lower. One of that sort of machine gun sound. So when we had the kick and the toms together, it gives that sort of pace to the track, gives it that sort of like urgency in there. For these ones, we've just cut the super lows on there and just boost it a little bit at that frequency, and then taking out a little bit of the mids. And then I put this Trans-X on there for a little bit more punch on the front. So if it's hard to hear 100% what's going on because the volume dips, and that can be, it can give the illusion that it sounds better when you got more volume. But if you can listen to the attack on there, just adds a little bit more bite to it. And then I have the sidechain compression on there again. And then you can see, one thing I forgot to mention is I'm just sending these. I have the bus one send there, and this one is, the bus one is like a room reverb, so that's how I can just quickly dial in. And then this one is a little delay. I have the little delay on the hats there. After that, we have this little shaker. Nothing too crazy. It's pretty crunchy. One thing that we did do is we got the majority of the elements in here, and then I went over to Sluggers Studio and we did the arrangement and kind of processed the sounds a little bit over there, stemmed it all out, and then I mixed it down over here. But yeah, again, just a spreader, sidechain compression, and a little EQ on there. Nothing too crazy again. Next up is the 303. And you can see just by the audio that we start off pretty low, and then it starts to build to that sort of peak, the drop there, and then the tails back down. On that we have the R bass, which I find is phenomenal on 303. It just adds that sort of weight to it. You can hear there, takes out a lot of lows, and then that just adds that boost to it. I put that on all of my 303s. It's just a good thing to do, because it just gives that sort of weight to it without having to add a sub, because we already have a different sub going on in here. Have a little EQ, taking out some lows and then just dipping. A little bit of a rise there for the bite of that 303. Another little saturator just to add a little bit more. Just adds a little bit more dirt to it as well. And then at the end, sidechain compression, just giving everything some space and whatnot. And as you can hear, and again, we just played this the whole way through and recorded it one take. And again, you can do this with a plugin and just put the automation in and whatnot. Or I have this little bit. Let's see if I can lift it up. It's a little nano control from Korg it has the little pots there, so you can assign those pots to plugins, and you can just play along with it. So then you're not getting something super perfect. Everything is just you playing, because one thing with automation, you can only change one thing at a time unless you have like a little controller like this, and then you can assign multiple controls to the pots and then kind of play along like a real 303 type thing. Under that we have the 106. It starts off nice and low and then builds up. Just for these little bits like that. And then after that we have this, the processing on that, nothing too crazy. Have this chorus on there, a little EQ, and again just a sidechain compression on there, and then sending it to the reverb. After that we have this sub that you might not be able to hear if you don't have headphones on, which just chugs along, and then we have like this little change in volume there for the different parts. And then I think down the back end here, yeah, we changed the key of it a little bit. And here again on that, just took, so it's super mono all the way at the bottom there, and then again taking the top off, so it's frequency that we didn't need, and it gives space for everything else in the mix. Have a limiter, just making sure everything's nice and tight, and with these it doesn't change the volume too much. We want it pretty steady in there. And then again another sidechain compression on there. Next we have the little stabs, and that's the same for these two channels, except this one has the filter on there, you can see there. And this is just a little bit, and it just has a little tail on there to help kind of control, it has a little tail on there to fill out the zone a little bit more, just to add a little bit more to the track. It's kind of like a call and response to the other one, a little bit, but not too much. And then on top we have this high synth that comes in just before the break, and it kind of adds that tension. And then carries over to the drop. And then we have the little change there. And then finally, we just have this little effects channel, and all that is just a little bit of noise and just pulled down in the mix just to fill it out a little bit. And on that, we just have an EQ, the compressor and the limiter on there to just keep everything dialed in. And that's pretty much it. Damn phone. And that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions on anything like that, but as you can see, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing too crazy going on. It was just all about getting some good solid ideas together and just making a track to fit a certain part of the set rather than just trying to make a track for just making it for anything. We just wanted it for that peak time sort of techno set. So until next time, see you later.